We begin tonight with U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas, among other titles. I covered the Middle East for 4 years. I never saw a U.S. ambassador go to Gaza. Hasn't been one since I was there in 2014. You're going in the midst of a war tomorrow morning to Gaza. Why is it worth the risk? What do you hope to find?
Well, the president wanted Steve Witkoff and me to go into Gaza, get a firsthand look of the situation with food, humanitarian efforts, the distribution of food and medical supplies. There's been so much misinformation, and a lot of it has been just malicious. The tragedy is that Israel's getting the blame for the lack of humanitarian care, when the fact is it's Hamas that started the war, Hamas that murdered 1,200 people, that took 250 people hostage, and they're the ones that are making it very, very difficult to get food to them because they continue to steal and loot the trucks of food that's coming in through the UN source. So we're going to go firsthand. The president wants to report as soon as we get back. And, I just appreciate a president with the clarity to say Hamas isn't going to continue to live there, rule there. They've got to be stopped, and the hostages have to be let go.
Yeah, the president said the fastest way to end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is for Hamas to, capital letters, surrender and release all the hostages. Noteworthy, Egypt, the Saudis, and the Qataris told Hamas to lay down their weapons and go. That's significant. But just on this point, I agree with you. The original blood libel after October 7th was Israel was committing war crimes. The new one is Israel's causing starvation. But can we say there is starvation in Gaza? It is not Israel's fault, ... I would ask you, does that mean there is nothing else Israel can or should do to alleviate the pain of at least some people in Gaza who are innocent?
Well, the fact is, Leland, they are. They're the ones who are making it possible to send the food through, whether it's the GHF program. They've opened up routes for hundreds of trucks to go in and distribute food. Some of the food agencies didn't want to take it in. They didn't think it was safe. So they parked the trucks. They parked the pallets of food. There was enough piled up that could have fed Gaza for 2 years. But here's the bigger question. Can you tell me any country in all of human history who was attacked, who was the victim of a war, and who were then criticized for not feeding the people who attacked them? This is insane. I mean, I've never heard of it, ever. And here's the interesting thing.
Israel's always held to a different standard. You and I think, both know why. But I just want to put a button on this to be clear, because there were some questions about this. The United States is not asking Israel to do anything more or differently.
No, the United States believes that Israel has gone above and beyond, and they've tried to protect civilians, but Hamas keeps amassing them in front of military targets. One thing I think it's interesting, it's the European nations and Canada and other Western civilized nations who are pushing Israel harder than they're pushing Hamas. And it's fascinating that this week it was the Saudis, the Qataris, and the Emiratis who said to Hamas, lay down your weapons, let the hostages go. My gosh. Think about what a contrast that is. And here's the other part of it. Has France or the UK or Canada or the Netherlands or Ireland, have they sent any food to Gaza? No, they haven't. Have they sent any volunteers? No, they haven't. Have they offered to take any refugees from Gaza? Not one. The hypocrisy is glaring.
Yeah, look, there used to be a joke when I was in Israel, Lord, I can take care of my enemies, help me with my friends. Which now applies and is no longer a joke when it comes to UK, France, and Canada. They have said that they will recognize a Palestinian state in September and basically abandon Israel. Is it fair to say that those three countries have chosen Hamas over Israel?
That's a very fair statement. It sounds harsh, but how else can you interpret it? And by the way, you know who really celebrated those statements that were being made by France and the UK and Canada and the other countries? Hamas. They loved it. They danced in the streets over it. That ought to tell you everything you need to know, because it really emboldened Hamas. It gave them a sense of new life. They were shaking their pom-poms over this at a time when, my gosh, what they should be doing is demanding that hostages get released and saying we will join with Israel and the United States in eradicating Hamas, and there's to be no way that Hamas survives this, for the same reason that nobody thought it would have been a good idea to let the Nazis survive World War II in Germany and have some role in governing Germany after World War II.
Yeah. You said they were shaking pom-poms. When I was there, they shook AK-47s. But, you know, things have changed, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah. This came out today. Palestinian Islamic Jihad released a video of Israeli hostage Ram Barofsky was abducted from the Nova Festival. We have that picture. His mother put out a heartbreaking statement as he was seen crying in this video. He may be the only starving Gazan that the New York Times doesn't care about, but or person in Gaza the New York Times doesn't care about. I think the question, though, here, is there any hope for the families of the hostages other than allowing Israel to militarily finish off Hamas and hope that there are hostages still alive at the end?
Yeah, I think there is hope, and that hope is because finally, through all the clutter of the European nonsense that's been said, President Trump today spoke with clarity, with moral clarity, and he called out the bad guys for who they are. He identified Hamas as the bad guys, and that's something that we needed. Thankfully, you had other Arab nations who were doing the same thing, and I'm grateful for the clarity that they exhibited this week. I just wish the Europeans and some of the other nations that are supposed to be highly developed, highly civilized, would have picked the side of the civilized people and not the uncivilized savages who massacred people on October the 7th, including raping women in front of their children and lighting grandmothers alive in their wheelchairs on fire in front of their families.
You know, it's not just the Europeans, though, and I realize you're over in Israel, so domestic American politics is not exactly front and center for you. But this is new Gallup polling, July 7th through 21st, among Americans 18 to 34 years old. 6% have a favorable view of the Israeli prime minister. Only 9% support the war in Gaza. Overall, U.S. approval of Israel's military action in Gaza hits a new low, 32%. I won't ask you to explain that because I think we know the answer, but I will ask you how we come back from that.
I think a lot of it, when the truth starts coming out, when hostages are either released or that we see that Hamas is not serious ever about releasing them, when people start getting accurate information coming out of Gaza, is one of the reasons Steve Witkoff and I are going there tomorrow. When we finally start understanding that trucks of food that went into Gaza got looted and stolen, and the food was then sold to the people who were supposed to get it for free. When people quit reading the New York Times and some of the news sources that this week got caught with their pants down around their ankles when they showed a picture of a young boy and said he was starving. Turns out, Leland, that young boy wasn't starving. He had a birth defect, and the Israelis had actually flown him to Jordan so he could get hospital treatment. There were other pictures of supposedly starving children with their mothers, but there was a real problem. The mothers were well fed. So if the child was starving, somebody in that household was eating. And that was an obvious thing that anybody, you didn't have to be Columbo or a Pulitzer Prize winner reporter to see that, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, there is an issue with how Israel is being portrayed. I want to play for you today. This is CNN interviewing what they called an Amnesty International researcher. Take a listen.
This is not simply a byproduct of the war. This is an intended, foreseen, and foreseeable result of Israel's military onslaught on Gaza that has resulted in what we are seeing. And for Palestinians, it's something that is expected because a nation like the United States that has been built on colonization, it's only natural for them to support another colonizer state in Israel.
I found that second clip of the same person, Bandor Hassan, in about 3 seconds on Google. And CNN passes this person off as what would supposedly be an independent researcher. I do wonder, and I'm going to ask this in a little bit of a pejorative way because it makes my blood boil when stuff like this happens, but is there any way to explain what happens with the New York Times, what happens with CNN, other than some form of anti-Semitism?
I think it is a form of anti-Semitism, but frankly, Leland, it's worse than that. It's professional suicide on the part of people who pretend to be journalists, who get information from the so-called Gaza Health Ministry, which from your having been there covering this region for many years know, the Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas. So when you get your news sources and you take at face value what Hamas says to be factual, you're in real trouble on a journalistic level, and the integrity you've shot right out of the window. I mean, this is disgusting kind of journalistic malpractice that should be called out.
Well, and it'll cost lives. Probably already has, to be fair. Mr. Ambassador, you got an early morning tomorrow. We appreciate you spending time with us. I wish I was still in Jerusalem. I'd ask to come along with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Leland. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.